to the RunRX Podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running. Welcome back to the RunRX Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Caroline, and I'm here with Coach Valerie. Coach Valerie, I want to talk about something that I've noticed, that we are trying to develop a relationship with our body and how it works and how it moves through space. And we get runners that come in that'll be like, well, I should be able to do this better, or I should be faster, or I should be so much farther along. And what's always fascinating to me, because I'll sometimes bring them into calls and talk to them about why they think they should be farther along. And I'll say, well, if you were learning how to swim or you were going to a martial arts school, would you get onto the mat of the dojo and say, I should be able to spar that black belt? Of course you wouldn't. You're a white, you're just starting. So what has to happen with our relationship with our bodies and our movement when we're starting this idea of running, even though we've been running for years? How do we handle that self-criticism?
Well, I think the challenge is that just like you just said, you're supposed to already know how to run. That's right. On you. And that's the culture. And so then when, for most people, they come into the membership after an injury, right? Or they're dealing with an injury. So first of all, they feel like their body failed them. Right. And my hip hurts, so it must be my bad hip. It must be my tight hip. See, they start to project it onto their body part.
Right.
You see what I mean? So I have a tight IT band, or I have this. And they separate it from the running instead of thinking, my hip is hurting. Once you come in, I know you can't know this before, but once I help you see, or we help you see what's going on in your run, say your hip is still hurting. And I'm like, okay, well, you're still reaching. Maybe you need to do a little bit more of this and that. So what we want is the quick fix. And because we're supposed to know, again, how to run, the relationship we have I feel like with running with our body is you're supposed to just perform when I expect you to.
Right.
And with other sports, with other, everything else is more, it's more specialized. You have to go take swimming lessons generally, or you have to go take, like you said, martial arts or whatnot. Running is natural. It's supposed to be, right? Running is natural. Mm-hmm. Everyone can run. So that's the relationship you've already developed with running. So you have to first change that relationship, that running is another movement that I just need to get a little bit more efficient at.
Well, and let's talk about that connection and that disconnection, because we see that a lot. I'm afraid my hip's going to hurt, so I'm going to go out and run more, or I'm going to run differently because I'm apprehensive about my hip, because we're not aware that we're all one unit. We're all one string of tendons and bands and muscles that are all connected. So if my hip is hurting, that may not be something I can fix in my hip. It could be something I'm fixing, it's my left hip, but it's my right shoulder, right?
For sure.
So how do we become more aware, okay, my hip's hurting, and how do I kind of become, how do I fix that mid-run? We've had that kind of happen where, I've talked before, where I'll feel my quads and go, oh, I shouldn't be feeling my quads. And so I'll fall, or I'll center on I'll tuck my pelvis in, and suddenly I'm feeling my hamstrings now. Oh, great. And I'll keep running.
But you see what it goes back to is that first you have to understand what is running.
Yeah.
How can you have that conversation if you have no idea what you're doing?
Right. Right.
If you have
how do we get that relationship?
Well, to come through RunRX membership. I mean, that's just,
that's the truth.
And guys, this is, it's true. If it's not something you're aware of, how would you be aware of it?
Right.
I'm only aware of my shins because I have a shin splint. Before I had shin splints, I didn't think of my shins. I didn't talk to them. I didn't give them I didn't acknowledge my shins until they said, hey, I hurt. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think for me, the first thing with people is they should, I'm not saying to buy an anatomy book or anything like that, but start to realize or work with your body, like we said, connect it as a unit. And guys, this was hard for me. When I got into fitness 30 plus years ago, I don't even want to say it, it was all body parts. When I very first started with fitness, people worked out body parts. You did your biceps, then you did your triceps.
Steel.
Then And so hindsight is very different, but that's what we were living in. So just so you guys know. And when I used to do a lot of personal training, especially guys would say, I don't want to work my legs because I'm a runner. Yeah. And I'd be like, that makes no sense. You understand that perception? Because the thought for so long was, if I add strength, I'm going to get slower. If I'm going to get these big, because I'm like, hey, you're not bodybuilding, but they would all think if I go over to this bicep curl machine, I'm going to look like Arnold. See these misconceptions. So it's the same with running. You're supposed to already know running. So really, I just only know running and how far I go. Mm-hmm. So there's not a relationship yet with what I'm supposed to be feeling or what running actually is. And I think that's the challenge, is you have to kind of say to yourself, I don't really know how to run, and be okay with that. And then start to be like, let me work on the movement of running. And then, and we go through this a lot. So when our bodies aren't doing what we want, we have to then go a little bit extra to help put them back in place. And you're right. The best way to put yourself back in place is move correctly and do the self-care that goes along with it.
Right. And we're always working towards that. Like, you had made the comment that we want our bodies, how it works and how it looks, to be ideal. Right. Like a great example is I want to wear high heels. Right. Because I like how I look in high heels, or I like how I feel in high heels. But then I wonder why I get plantar fasciitis, right? When I go running. But we're not taking into account what we're doing outside of our running that's affecting our running, and how we're trying, like you said, we're not listening to our body. It's telling us, no, stop standing on your toes. Or if you're going to stand on your toes, can you give me a calf massage? Can you massage my feet a little bit and loosen up? I've been standing on my toes.
And that's kind of right. Well, but then, but that's the whole thing. I think. Yeah. Well, I think that overall, when you come in, we help you see how you should be standing for your run, how you should be standing for walking, how you should be sitting. Most of us kind of know this, right? There's kind of an understanding. Like, people talk about this a lot. People work on the computer all the time, and all of a sudden everybody's got these tight necks and shoulders. Mm-hmm. Well, if you don't do things throughout the day consistently to open up your tight neck and shoulders, just telling me you have tight neck and shoulders isn't going to make it better. Right. Right. So it's the same thing. It's like, what are you doing pattern wise throughout your day to help yourself be ready for your run? If I'm going to go running after work, or I'm even running first thing in the morning, what are things I'm doing to help my body be prepared to run, to be ready to go running? Right. And if it's like, I've got to sit in meetings all day the day before, and I've got 8 hours of meetings, then I hope you've got a ball or a roller at your desk and you're doing things in between. You know what I mean? Like, this is what we talk about, is kind of like making sure you've got a connection with your body. So you're doing things, not like you have to be like 24/7 thinking about it, but there has to be thoughts. I tell people that all the time when they come into RunRX. I'm like, if once a day you stood and posed for a minute, imagine how much better your balance would be and your running would be at the end of 7 days. Yeah. Versus not practicing at all, or thinking I'm just going to practice right before I go running. So I think that, I don't know. I mean, we've probably derailed a little on this conversation, but we just try to help people look at the body all together as a unit.
Yes. And that's what when you were talking about sitting at the desk and stuff like that, it's amazing to me how we think, and this happened, before I started working out with you again, during COVID and stuff like that, when I was sitting around a lot, right? And I would get up after sitting around or spending a day doing barely anything, right? And suddenly my right lower back and buttocks would be sore, right? I don't know what I did. Now, fast forward 6 months later or whatever, I'm working out with you. I do a series of squats or lunges, and now I wake up and both butts are sore, right? It suddenly went from, oh, so however I was sitting or standing or working was causing a disconnection in my body, which caused my one butt cheek and back to be sore. But when I move correctly and exercise, yes, I'm still sore, but it's even throughout. And I'm actually like engaging my body. And I know where that butt pain came from. It came from those squats, right? So that's what I mean. What I'm talking about when I'm talking about that relationship is if you go out and run and just arbitrarily or strength train, or I'm going to my foot hurts, so I'm just going to roll my foot. And you don't think about, well, where's the foot connected to? It's connected to the ankle. It's connected to the calf. My shin hurts. I'm going to look at my hip. I'm going to look at my knee. If you don't look at your body and really see the relationship of how it all goes together, I think you're doing yourself a disservice in whatever you do, whether you're running or swimming or standing at your desk. If you disconnect from that, you're really losing out on the beauty of our bodies and how it moves.
Yeah, I just think, and to be fair, so many people, you want to use running as a disconnect. Right. And it's interesting because in order to disconnect, they do things like put music on and they have their watch on. So it's set to they want to see how fast they're running, how far they're running. They're listening to music. They're doing everything really. I mean, think about it. When you do that, you're kind of disconnecting from the running itself. Are you listening to, people are like, how do you not run with music? And I'm like, how do you run with music? I haven't run with music in 20 years. And I'm always finding my fall point and trying to open myself up to the fall. There's so much really good connection you can get with your running. So I just feel like when you let go of thinking about how far am I running, again, not in your race, just when you're training, start being present in the run. I think it'll help you change how you feel about running, how you feel about your body and its connection to running. But definitely there's a little bit of a challenge to get there.
Definitely. Okay, guys, we hope to hear from you next week. If you have any questions you'd like us to take up a topic on the podcast, you can email us at support@runrx.fit. That's support@runrx.fit. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRX Podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.